Welcome to the Girl Dad Show.
Welcome to the Girl Dad Show, a professional parenting podcast. Each month, I interview entrepreneurs, leaders, and professionals who are balancing parenthood, life, and profession in the hopes to learn what it takes to be an amazing professional parent. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Girl Dad Show. Today, I had Kyle Wiggins, an entrepreneur that has gone from the Peace Corps all the way to starting businesses, meeting his wife in another country, and finally settling down here with another venture that he's embarking on. And we talk a lot about how to create perseverance and determination and grit through your kids, how he was brought up, and how it's helped him have optionality and what he wants for his kids. It's a wonderful episode, a great story, and I can't wait for you to check it out and let me know what you think. Kyle, thanks for joining me today on my show.
Thanks for having me. This is really an honor. It's been a long time.
It has been a long time. I know we've been talking about having you on for quite a while, and I'm glad that we finally made it work.
Yeah.
Let's jump right into it. Why don't you tell the listeners what you do for a living?
Yeah. So I'm doing a bunch of things, but primarily, I'm an entrepreneur, startup advisor, nascent angel investor. I've co-founded and led two companies, both in sort of the experiential and hospitality space. And everything that I've done has been, either around tech or tech enabled. My latest company is a company called Assembly. Born out of the pandemic, we bring people together over high-end virtual dining experiences. We're at a pretty interesting point in the company. And by the time this episode is published, I might have some fun news to share. So maybe you'll have an update to put in the notes or something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. It's been a wild ride over the last 2 years, which is great.
That's amazing. So this is your third startup.
Yeah. Well, no. So this is actually my second startup. And the first startup I had was in the travel space. I built it over 6.5 years. It actually was born out of my Peace Corps experience back in 2010 to 2012. And it was centered around travel and travel in emerging markets. I basically came into this Assembly when I reconnected with a classmate of mine from college who lived in Austin and who had kind of built a name for himself in the hospitality space and was looking at trying to, figure out how you can create a really incredible dining experience in sort of a decentralized, technology enabled environment or atmosphere. And the pandemic was the best time to actually launch something like that because nobody could go anywhere, right? And IRL was pretty much dead for a long time or for an unknowable amount of time. And so we kind of dove into that together and were able to really grow a substantial company over the last 2 years.
That's amazing. Yeah, I have so much to unpack here, but I'm going to start from the very beginning. Peace Corps to starting a travel startup. Talk to me about what motivated you to go to the Peace Corps, because that's a serious commitment. That's a serious decision.
Yeah, no, Peace Corps is a very serious commitment, a very serious decision to make. And a lot of times when people ask me this, I think that they have in their mind, maybe when you ask a lot of Peace Corps volunteers, it's like, why did you join the Peace Corps? It's a really hard thing. It's 27 months. You're living on the level of the people that you're helping with, that you're helping. And so you're living and working with them in these communities for over 2 years, and you're essentially making no money while you're doing that. So it's definitely the hardest thing I've ever done. And, I think, for me, I think people are always surprised to hear that, the reasons for me to do the Peace Corps were I consider to be actually quite selfish. So, it wasn't just, I really want to help people, or I want to have an impact on the world, or I want to, cure world hunger or whatever. Right. To do something like that, I felt like, I needed to have, my own incentives and sort of selfish reasons for wanting to do it in order to get through it. Right. So basically, when I graduated from college, I was kind of at a place where I had done some different entrepreneurial things during college. I had worked in finance, done internships at private equity and finance and all of that. And I knew I wanted to do something in business, but more so, I was 22, 23 years old. And I was just thinking, I was fortunate to be around a lot of like, cosmopolitan, like just like really interesting people from interesting backgrounds. And I realized, there was a lot of that I wanted myself. I didn't speak another language fluently. I'd taken Spanish forever throughout school, and as I found out when I got to Panama, I did not speak Spanish. And, so there's all these things that I wanted. Right, I wanted to be more cosmopolitan, had traveled more and be more experienced. I wanted to be able to speak another language fluently. I just wanted to have very interesting experiences. I also wanted to do something very meaningful and impactful. And I wanted to do something that was related to kind of entrepreneurship and business, because even at that time and at that age, I really felt like, I was just believed in the power of entrepreneurship and business to be able to positively impact the world. Right. And so
Wow.
I kind of said, like, I don't really know what I want my career to be, but I want to do something right now that will enable me to start to accumulate all of these characteristics. And I had also kind of thought to myself, my whole life has been like broken up into chunks of 4 years, from elementary school to middle school to high school to college. And so I kind of just said, okay, what do I want to be able to say about myself at 27? Right. And like, who is Kyle at 27? Is he, a guy? I want him to be, a guy that is bilingual, right? And that has traveled and had really interesting and unique experiences in the world. And, has been working in business and is like, basically knowledgeable in that area, but not just within his own community at home, but also in a kind of global context. And those were some things that I just really cared about. And I also wanted to say that I had been able to make a significant impact somewhere, right? And on something. And Peace Corps kind of checked all those boxes for me. And so I decided to apply. And that was it. Yeah. So
that's amazing. I mean, yeah, I'm sure they loved having you too. I mean, it sounds like you had a really good head on your shoulders, even at such a young age. I mean, that's incredibly insightful to think about your life at that age in chunks of 4 years. I mean, it sounds obvious when you say it now in retrospect, but I'm like, yeah, that's actually a really good point. Like you're kind of conditioned to change. You're almost like evolving every 4 years, and being able to look at it like that in the moment is pretty unique. I'd say that that's pretty insightful. Kudos to you for doing that.
Yeah, thanks.
Have you been repeating that process of like every 4 years of like mapping out where you want to be in the next 4 years?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. I actually do still do this. And obviously, and like, it's not as if like, okay, I make a decision today, I'm 36 right now. So it's like, I don't say, okay, well, now that I've decided this is what I want, I can't change anything over the next 4 years. Right.
Yeah.
So there's always sort of like, revisiting, what my goals are and, what are the priorities and the things that I say that I care about. But there's still a lot of consistency there. I have a tendency to kind of really think thoughtfully at different points of like what matters to me, and then kind of stick to that. Right. And yes, I revisit and I ask again, does this still matter to me? But often it doesn't change that often. And I'd say like it is 4 years. What I've graduated to doing now, now that I also have a family, there's other people that are, a part of my life, is like, I think about it in terms of sort of a little bit long term, right? And so like kind of more broadly, what are my goals, for the next 15 to 20 years, right? But those are really, really general and broad, right? And it's like a list of priorities, right? Of like saying like, okay, I would love to have all of these things happen in my life, and then kind of pick the top ones, right? And then say like, okay, these top 5 are probably the things that matter to me the most, and then start to work backwards. Right. And then eventually, or start to work backwards. And the further backwards I get, the more detailed I get about, what it is that I'm actually going to be doing, right. To get to those points. So yeah,
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Yeah. I love this idea and concept. I mean, it's a fascinating way to think about your life, because I mean, when you think about businesses that succeed and businesses that are able to thrive, it really comes down to the ability to like pinpoint what success looks like. and then create them into bite-sized activities, right? But you're doing that with your life, and you're also kind of you're alluding to the fact that you're also doing that with your family now in tow.
Yeah.
And if my math is correct, it sounds like you're wrapping up your last trimester this year.
Yeah.
And so you should be thinking about your next one. Oh, not trimester, sorry, your next semester.
Yeah.
You should be thinking about the next 4 years about right about now,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You're starting to
Exactly. So
Okay.
that's kind of right. I mean, it's and again, it's like it's always sort of evolving, and like, as you know, when you have a kid, like some of that wasn't really like, it's not like I planned. I said like I must have a child by the time I'm 35 or whatever, right? Where
Yeah, some people do that, by the way.
Some people do that, and also some people rightfully so do that. My wife probably is like more thinking a little bit in that way. But that also speaks to the fact that, for example, like, having children, I've always had the thing where it's like, this is really up to you, right? Like, like to my wife, right? Where it's like, yes, I want, we got married, part of the reason we got married, do our values align in a lot of ways? And yes, we both wanted to have children. Great. When we have children, right, is not my choice, right? It's one of those things where I will not be bearing the weight of that, and so, that's one of those things where it's like, you also have to be able to kind of follow, right? And like, know that there are things where you're just going to be more of a passenger, but in terms of being able to make the decision of when something is going to happen, and then be able to have that fit into your overall, view of where your life is going to go.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then while we're on that topic, let's talk about your family a little bit.
Yeah.
So how many and how old are your kid or kids?
So I have one daughter, and her name is
Girl Dad.
Yeah, Girl Dad, exactly. I have one daughter, her name is Zoe Lauren Wiggins. And awesome. She is going to be 11 months old in 3 days.
Congratulations. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man. So you're in the early stages of fatherhood.
Oh yeah. So much wisdom to share with everyone. I've got it all figured out.
That's right. You got 11 months under you. What else is there, right? It's all easy. It's all downhill from here.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's super easy.
Exactly.
Very good. So, oh my gosh, she's turning 1 soon.
Yeah.
Are you doing a big thing?
Yeah. I mean, I think right now it feels like we're just going to do something like, have a get together, but I'm sure it is going to grow, right? Like we have sort of a month, a month of planning and executing.
Yeah. Culturally, Asians have the really a big thing around the first year of birth.
Oh, really?
Like it's like a really big deal. Yeah. And so I think it's just like from like, it's kind of morbid to talk about it this way, but I think it's culturally because most kids didn't make it to 1 year old. So you celebrated that 1 year. I think that's really what it was. Just like the death rate in children, obviously have decreased significantly with technology and advancements in science. But I think that's where it came from. I'm actually pretty sure it is. But yeah, so they do a huge thing on 1 year, like, and then there's all these celebrations, and then you do all these like things with like the kid, and you put them in front of like a pencil, money, and like to see what their kind of career they're gonna take. It's like it's a whole thing. Yeah, it's so fun.
Yeah, I think I've seen some things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, it's pretty. We kind of overdo it with the 1 year part. It's really funny.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to do the math here, and so it sounds like you started this company a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
You said it's like year 4 now, right? You're on this one?
No, so this year is year
6.
Yeah, we just got out of year 2. So my first company,
just out of year 2.
My first company I built over 6.5 years. But this,
sorry, I'm mixing the two things up.
Okay.
Yeah.
This company has only been around for 2 years. Yeah.
So wait, then that does actually beg the question. So when did you decide to have kids?
Yeah.
I know you said that you kind of like let it up to be a decision for timing for your wife, but
yeah,
did she realize that you're going to start this company?
Yeah, maybe, sort of. Like,
I
think it's basically, I mean, one of the great things about our relationship too is like, so my wife, the way we met, she's from Chicago. I'm originally from Dallas, Texas. But we met in 2015 and we were in Santiago, Chile. And the reason is because we were both in Startup Chile, which is like an accelerator for startups and for
Cool.
founders from all over the world who, were just looking for acceleration funding, in order to go full time on their projects. And so we had both gotten into this program, and from the time we met each other, we're pretty much attached at the hip, for all intents and purposes. And but while my startup continued to go, after the program, and we got more funding and raised money and all of these things, and kind of went on to do all of that, with her startup, she had a really great experience, and it was a really incredible company. But they, her and her co-founders, decided to dissolve the company and each move on and go their own separate ways. And so she ended up going in to work in tech, but working for Salesforce. This is in 2016, and has been working there since 2016. And, the way we look at our kind of partnership with regard to work is, we kind of have a balanced portfolio. So it's, she's the rock, right? like there's no volatility. Salesforce is not going anywhere, and it's just going up and to the right, and it's great, and they love her, and she loves working for the company, and it's great benefits. They love their employees. It's amazing. So that's sort of like our stable. And then, I am the one kind of taking the risks on getting to outsized returns, right? And kind of helping
you're the moonshot.
Yeah, exactly. The moonshot stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I have I have a stomach for that, and I have, I've been in a lot of, uncomfortable, ambiguous, uncertain situations, from Peace Corps to my first startup and like the second startup and all of these things. And so it's a place where I feel comfortable, and I am just get excited by it. Now, that being said, right, like now that I am married, I don't just get to take every risk that I want to take. And it does take some creative maneuvering and, convincing.
Oh, yeah.
There's nothing it's not, we both are aligned in this philosophy. And at the same time, we both also have our own biases about like the areas that we are in. So she really has she has a very strong argument about why everyone should be working at Salesforce, or everyone should be working at a company like Salesforce, or particularly I should be, right? And then, I have my own opinions about, startups, entrepreneurship, early stage, blah, blah, blah. And so it's not always just like, oh, great, you want to do that? I'll do that. It's great. Like there's a lot of discussion. There's a lot of negotiating.
Totally. I love that you broke that down, because from the outside in, it's like an obvious thing, right? And you guys get the best of both worlds. Like you said, a diversified portfolio. You get the risk and the upside, and you have the stability and the consistency. But then the reality is that takes a lot of negotiation to make those two polarities work, right?
Yeah, exactly. We both love our work too, and we need to make time. We need to make time for each other. We need to, there's just so many things, right? And so, it's not always just like, a given that it's like, oh, great, we're in just perfect balance and everyone's happy and there's no arguments. And, that's not a reality at all. Right. But it's still, our foundation is, we're aligned, values, vision, mission, like, just like any great company, right? And
you guys have that for your family?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So we have, we actually, it's funny. I was kind of saying it more generally, but we do have, values. Like we have like we could say the Wiggins family values that are like, and we actually have them like framed, and they're up in our house, like all over the place, right? And it's
oh wow, that's awesome.
Yeah,
you were a very intentional man.
Yeah,
very intentional man.
Interesting,
yeah.
And a lot of this is like, I cannot take my wife. Like, it's like we talk about these things, but then my wife has the ideas of like, no, we should actually like write them down. Like, I want Zoe to be able to see them. I want like I want us to see them every day, you know? So it's just like in your, like at a startup office where it's like, oh, this is what we're about, you know, that exists in our home as well.
That is brilliant. I'm totally gonna copy that. I'm gonna talk to my wife immediately. We gotta come up with our values, our shared values, and put them on the wall, because I like what your wife just said. That's actually rings really true for me. I mean, think about, like, the whole concept of like raising your kid and like in raising them right, and then there's all these different things that you could teach them and show them. But at the end of the day, it's really about the values that help them make the decisions to react to
Yeah.
things, right? And there's obviously experiential things where you like come across them falling or messing up or getting into a fight with another kid or whatever that may be, and these interactions you can coach them through those decisions. But also just at a blanket blatant level, having it up on the wall as they're growing up, this is
Yeah.
brilliant. You know what I mean? Just like, here's what we stand for. I mean, that's amazing. I love
Yeah,
it.
it's good. I mean, yeah, like it's like
Yeah.
you see it when you see it, and I think about myself as a kid. It's like there's so many things that your parents say to you all the time, and you just sort of start to commit it to memory of, like, as a kid, it's just sort of like, this is what my mom's, this is how she's going to respond, this is what she's going to say, she's just going to say this thing over and over, whatever. And it like doesn't really have a lot of meaning until like you're an adult and you're on your own and you're out in the world, and then like you remember those things, and all of a sudden you're like, oh wow, that's true. Like that actually hits, different.
Oh yeah.
now
I feel like you're really, really introspective and retrospective, because it sounds like you pull a lot of insights faster than me. But I actually didn't get that same feeling until I had kids. So like it took me having kids for me to even go, oh yeah, now I know why my mom and dad said that. You know, like it's really fascinating how much I emulate them. Do you end up like emulating what they do, or are you combating that? Or are you trying to improve on them? Or
you mean
what
like
does
my
that look like
parents?
for you? Yeah.
I think that there's definitely some things, there are some ways that I am absolutely my father and my mother, right? Like there's certain things that whether you admire your parents or you don't, right? Like your experience with them is what you know, right? And it's very difficult. You can even deliberately try not to be, your experience, but it's like, in certain moments, like, it's just the way that you will react, right? You will react based on what you know and what you've experienced. And my parents were great. Like, I grew up in a really, I was one of four. I had an older sister. We're three boys. I was the oldest boy. My father is a lawyer. My mother is a doctor. And like we had a really good childhood, but we had like an intense one, right? And like one that was there were a lot of expectations, right? Like there were set high expectations, and also expectation of effort, expectation of achievement and outcomes. And those are some things that I do feel that I will pass on, right? Like it's funny because like a lot of that has rolled into my professional life, in terms of like building teams and building companies, and I think that they're good for family as well. Primarily I think of like, so we were all musicians. So like from like early ages, all four of us, from like age 2, age 3, we played instruments. So my sister played the violin, I played the cello. My brother that plays the cello, I have another brother that plays the violin as well. And all of us started from like, 2 or 3 years old. And, doing private lessons, practice every day. It was like, you have to practice every day that you eat. That was like the rule in our house. And it was also, especially until the age of 10, like, my dad, even though he would, he was a partner at a big law firm, he would come home late, but he would practice with us, at least 30 minutes every single day. Especially at the early ages, where it was just like, and he would come home late, and if we were in bed, he'd say, like, did you come in? And he'd say, did you practice today? And we'd say, yes, whether we did or not, right? And he'd say, okay, great, let me hear it, right? And so then I had to get up, and you have to go and play, and like, it's only like just making sure. And obviously that's a lot, right? It's not like that was, joyous all the time for me. There are many times that I thought, I want to quit, at 5 years old, 6 years old, whatever it might be. but we kind of there was kind of the rule in our house where it was like there were three things that were requirements until we were 18, which was like, school, church, and music, right? And then other than that, right, it was sort of like, as long as we were handling those three areas, well, we were allowed to pursue and try anything else. So I was an athlete. I played basketball. I played soccer. I played every sport. I played hockey in Dallas, in Texas, like for 1 year. Right. But I mean, I got to play a lot of sports. I got to try all the things I was interested in, but I had to do those things. And what was great about that is I did come to love music and love the cello, and I got really, really good at it. And I played in college, and I continued to play, and it's always been like a really unique, thing about me, that I could present, and no doubt, like, has just helped me tremendously throughout my life to be able to have this skill and to be really, really, really good at it. I think that is something that I will pass on, right? Is that like there are going to be certain things that I am setting my children up to just have, right, as a foundation. When they're 18, they can decide, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm never going to touch this instrument. I'm never going to touch this. I don't want to go to school, whatever, right? They could decide that, right? I hope they don't, but like they could decide that at that point. But I'm going to at least set them up to be able to have options. And that's one way that I think you can do that.
Oh my gosh, I love your parents so much. That's awesome, man. That is so cool. So church, school, music. Is the order also important, or is it?
Like, I think the order is somewhat important, but you really wouldn't be able, like, as a kid, you wouldn't be able to tell that you would think they were all number one, because like you could get in trouble equally for like not handling your responsibilities in any one of those things. You go to school more often. You go to school every day, right? And I had to practice every day, right? Church was more of like a once or twice a week, kind of thing. So there wasn't a lot of like, it didn't feel like there was as much pressure there as there was like within school and within, music, right? But then it's like, it also taught me, it's like for the things I really liked on my own or came into my own, like I played basketball. I was a varsity basketball player in high school. Like I really loved basketball, and I worked on my own, and fortunate to have great coaches. My uncle was a really good player, all this stuff. But like I really worked on my own to get really good at that, right? And I knew I kind of had a blueprint on how to do that because of, the way that I was forced to become a good student and, to also become a great musician.
It's very, very sophisticated, actually, because you're also learning not only those core skills and those facets, you're also learning persistence, discipline, determination. You're learning perseverance, grit. You're literally learning grit. You know what I mean? You're learning how to ride through, like all the emotions of getting good at something, right? And like, becoming, a master of something, it's like 10,000 hours. But like during those 10,000 hours, it's not like this. My gosh, it's like this. You know what I mean?
It's a lot of up and down. I mean, there's even like just little practical skills. I mean, for music, one of the things that I'd still carry with me is like, isolating problems, taking them out of their context and then putting them back in. And it's sort of like, it's like in music, like you're working on a certain passage, of a sonata or whatever it might be. And there's always like these parts where, you just like, it's like, oh, I'm not like, I always mess this up, or this note's always out of tune, or I can't make this shift, or whatever it might be, right? And sort of like that process of just like isolating the measure, like taking that out of the context of the whole thing and just practicing that movement and like that one part. And then, then like attaching the transitions, right, of the measure after or the measure before, and saying, so this is the movement. This is what your body feels like. This is like what you're thinking. This is everything that goes into getting into this, right? And now I've practiced that. And so I can get into it and do it. And then how I get out of it and like how it feels, and like just really isolating it and putting it back in. Like I found that to be super helpful in my professional life, like, athletics, like in everything, right? Of just like, learning how to like break down a problem and then build it back up into a really viable solution.
I love it. So did the rest of your siblings become entrepreneurs too? Or did they follow more of that, lawyer and
Yeah, so it's interesting. My sister was a doctor, an ophthalmologist, and my brothers are in education. One of my brothers is in education, higher education, works for a university in Dallas, and then and another one of my brothers is sort of more in entrepreneurship and tech. He's kind of following a little bit more of my lead. He hasn't founded any of his own companies yet, but I could definitely see that in his future.
Wow, that's awesome. And then what do your parents think about you being an entrepreneur versus going down like a academic specialized skill?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they get it, and I think that they understand it. It's not. It's like it's just like a different. It's like a different generation, different time. I think that when I think that they also appreciate, like where they came out of. What they would say is like it wasn't an option for them to go to the Peace Corps, right? They were. My parents actually both
Yeah.
were extremely, extremely, extremely intelligent, kids growing up, right? And my dad was born in tech or born in Philadelphia. My grandfather was in Vietnam. They were all over the place, but ended up settling in Texas ultimately. And my dad, was he was actually the valedictorian of his high school class, but because he was black,
Wow.
they didn't allow him to be the valedictorian, and so they made him the
Oh, wow.
salutatorian. Um,
Jeez.
and they made him the salutatorian, but right, he still got to give a speech at graduation and all of these other things, and he ended up going to Harvard, and that's where he met my mom. And my mom, she graduated from high school. She was from St. Louis. She graduated from high school when she was 16 years old and went to Harvard as well, right? And this was in the
Oh,
70s, right?
wow.
And so my parents are both, for them, they were both coming from very humble beginnings, right? But, from families that were loving and that cared about education, just hadn't had those types of opportunities before. And for them, they were on a track, right? Where it was like, I'm going here, for a reason, and, I'm going to take advantage of this. And they went straight, medical school, law school, clerk, lawyer, partner, all of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
My mom's a psychiatrist, so she ended up being in private practice and, um, running psychiatric hospitals, all this stuff. Like, just like, they were on the track. So the idea of going to the Peace Corps,
They're
the idea
driven.
of like just starting your own company, and like moving all over the world,
Yeah.
was just like not a thing.
Yeah. It's a luxury.
I think that they feel it's sort of it's a testament to them, that, we had those options, or that I had that option where I could say, you know what, I've graduated, but I'm just going to go, I'm going to go to Panama for 2 years and volunteer.
I love it. I love it. What a great adage and kind of honor to your parents to, to say it that way and think about it that way. I mean, obviously that's a lot of appreciation that you have for them. Have you told them this? I'm
Yeah.
assuming you have based on our interview so far. You've seemed very expressive and
Yeah. We've definitely talked about this, and like, even when I was there and when I came back, I mean, my dad would say that he was like, this was never an option for me, to go do something like this. But I think they
yeah,
were really proud of, that proud of, the sacrifice that, I was making to go and do that, but also, just being able to kind of sit back and say, wow, look at what we were able to provide, Yeah.
that's right. It's amazing. Yeah, what an amazing accomplishment and wonderful story.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Before I go into my rapid fire
Yeah.
questions, I have one more question. About being a parent. This is more directed towards you. What do you want Zoe to be
Yeah.
when she grows up?
I want Zoe to be. I think in general it's the same thing that I think about for my life. I don't know what I want Zoe to be. I want Zoe to have options, and I want her to always have more options than she had the day before. So I want whatever she ends up doing, I want it to provide more choices for her. Where she can decide, hey, I want to go into this now, or hey, I want to go do this thing now, or here's where I think I can have a big impact. I mean, that's really what I hope and dream for her. And I'd say that, like, the one other kind of like quality, or like the thing that I think we are trying to do as parents, and that was done in my household, is that there's always an emphasis on, both effort and achievement and outcomes, right? And so it's sort of like, I think that for us and for my wife and I, we want to treat effort, like good effort, with like positive encouragement, and like, really, continuing to be there and helping and encouraging. And then we will treat achievement and outcomes with rewards, right? But we don't mix the two, right? You don't get rewards for effort, like, which is kind of sounds bad, but to me, that's more reflective of the real world, right? Like, the real world doesn't, you don't get participation trophies, right? There's no trophy, for effort.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that effort is bad, right? Good, strong effort is great, right? And that
Yeah.
deserves to be encouraged, and that deserves to be, propped up, and continue to push and cultivate that effort so that you can get to achievement and outcomes, right? And so that's, and when you get to achievement and outcomes, that's where your reward is, right? And so like that's sort of how we think about that. And then if you want to go the other way, right? Lack of effort, right? That gets you, well, in this household, will probably get you like punishment or something. Like, you don't have to call it you don't have to call it punishment, but it will not get you encouragement. It'll get you stern looks.
That's right. I love it. I mean, it's like, it sounds super obvious, and but it's not, and it's very complicated to think about it that way. And I know it sounds it can sound bad, but I don't think I don't think it's bad at all, because the reality is that you're exactly right. The real world, doesn't, hey, you failed your thing, but so you still get
Right.
the prize at the end. No, it doesn't
Right.
work like that, and that's the reality of it. And it's also like the fact that, like, not showing effort only reduces your chances of succeeding, but increasing your effort, whether you succeed or fail,
Exactly.
increases your chance of succeeding. So realistically, those two things are correlated, but not directly, right? Like, some instances your effort won't mean anything, but it does increase your chances of succeeding.
Right. And if you keep going, right, then with that effort, then you are going to have some success, right? Like, I think that's the thing, is like, it's never where you're just always giving effort and you just never will achieve something, right? Like, your efforts are going to lead to success, whether it's in that specific thing you're trying to do, or you discover that, oh, like, I was trying to do this through this effort, but now I've actually discovered that this is actually my lane. I'm going to go into this, and you're going to find that achievement, And so it's like with effort, it's like, you're never going to, what we promise you is like, I'm never going to abandon Zoe, right? I'm never going to say like, oh, you didn't achieve this outcome, so, you're no good to me. Goodbye, right? Like, that will never happen, right? It's going to be, effort is going to get a lot of encouragement. We are always going to be there to help you kind of figure out where it is, that you are going to be the most successful and be the most happy and fulfilled. And like that's where your rewards and your outcomes will come.
Yeah, I love it. Kyle, let me switch gears here and go ask you some of my rapid fire questions that I like to ask all my guests. So first and foremost, what advice do you have for other parents and soon to be parents?
Yeah. So again, I have an 11-month-old. I'm well seasoned, ready to tell every father how to be the best father. No, I'd say the only thing. So for me, all of my advice is probably most appropriate for people who are about to have a child, or who are in the middle of having, they're in the middle of the first year. What I've learned is like, especially in let's say the fourth trimester, right? Just like right after you have the baby, is, being as supportive of your partner as possible. There's so little that you can do. There's so much stress and like responsibility on, my wife, and she, like, I realized that like without, like, she is the key to the whole thing. Like, nothing works without her, right? Therefore, like, I need to be doing everything possible to make sure that her mind is in the best place possible, and that she's feeling supported, and that she's feeling that like, we're in this together, and that, I'm doing everything possible to help her have an easier time so that she can spend time in the bonding with Zoe and all of that stuff. And so I every like soon to be father I talk to, I just say like, you gotta like whatever you can do to make this easier, because it is difficult, right? Those first few months, first few weeks, but first few months are difficult. And like, you have just got to be present and be in it and be as helpful as possible. And that'll make for so much of a better time, right? Like, it just really, but it's just crucial.
Yeah, that's great advice. I love it. Next question. If you can go back and tell yourself one thing before having kids, what would you tell yourself? It might even be the same thing, but I'll ask it anyways.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's that. I think I don't really know that there's anything I would tell myself. It's been good so far. I'd say you can ask me in a year or two, and I may have some other things. I'd be like, oh my gosh.
I'll call you on that. Yeah, I'll totally ask you.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the next one. So, what is the most surprising thing that you've learned about yourself after becoming a parent?
I think it's my own capacity to love another person is even bigger than I thought. And it's not like I love my wife. I love my family. Like I just, I really cherish and appreciate, the people that have been closest to me throughout my life. But it is another level with a child. And also what I'd say too is it grows, right? Like and you could probably tell me more like what happens next, but like I was surprised at how like, when she was first born, it was like, oh wow, this is our daughter. I love her, whatever. But like, it was almost like every day, every week, each month, it was just, and I guess some of it's like their personalities come out, like all those other things, but it's just like, it just gets more and more and more intense, right? Like for me. And that was also like kind of surprising, right? That like, oh my gosh, I love this child so much. This is nuts. Like, this is nuts.
Oh yeah. It takes over your whole life. Yeah, it takes over everything. Yeah, you have to like fight to keep your wife and yourself like up there because it just starts to like envelop everything. Yeah.
Oh gosh. Oh god.
It gets a lot worse. I'm telling you that right now. All right, so let's bring it home. What's your all-time favorite business book?
Okay, so I just finished 7 Powers by Hamilton Helmer. And I really, really, really enjoyed it. And I think it's like, there's a lot of, it's like math. And I say like math. There's a lot of math in it I just really love the frameworks, for how to think about how to build, an incredible business, right? And what you should be seeking, right? Whether you're trying to, it really goes into like, the 7 different, powers that a company can have, whether it's process power or cornered resources or counter positioning, all of those types of things, and how like these really great companies have done that, from Intel to Netflix and others, right?
Oh, awesome. I can't wait to read this.
Yeah, no, you got it. And it's great to listen to. It's also great to have in written form because there's a lot of formulas in there. But the formulas are simple, but it's just great conceptually to think about like, oh, for any business I'm building, I'm seeking one of these powers, right? And like being able to figure out, which of those you're after, whether it's network effects or counter positioning, whatever it might be, right? And it can help you in terms of thinking about how to grow your business, right? I think it's really, really great, and everybody should read it.
It's awesome.
I've leveraged Hard Thing About Hard Things a bunch of times. And it's a great go-to for all of the craziness that will happen, when you start a company. Yeah. Like, it doesn't matter how big your company is, it will you will go through some version of things that happen there. So
yeah, that's my favorite business book. So that rings really true for me. I love that you brought that one up. And then last question, Kyle. So when you're not building the next big startup and being a super dad and super husband, what does Kyle do for fun?
Yeah. So I love fitness. I don't know how much fun it always is, right? But I do. I like to work out and trying to stay healthy. I have recently, I love basketball, as I mentioned earlier. My wife is also a great basketball player.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, we bonded over. But I also very recently have bought a road bike and have started to get into cycling, and I'm enjoying it. And it's dangerous because like I'm going down, like I'm just now every day I feel like I'm purchasing something else for my bike every single day, and it's really annoying. It's really annoying. But yeah, no, I've started to get into cycling, and so that's another thing that I really like to do. My wife and I also, like I said, we met in Chile. We love to travel. We haven't been traveling a lot since the pandemic and since we had Zoe, but that's something that we're looking to get back into soon enough. So hopefully we'll be able to travel more soon.
Awesome. Kyle, this was an awesome interview. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. This was really, 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 really great, really fun, and good way to spend the Friday afternoon.
Oh, I love to hear that. We'll talk to you soon. Hopefully we can get the girls together.
Yes, we should definitely do that.
Talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
Thank you again for listening to The Girl Dad Show. To help our show grow, please let us know who we should interview next by filling out the form on our website or commenting below.